Things are getting hot in Venezuela. We got a bunch of breaking stories right now, and it's hard to know what's real and what's not because the propaganda is a-flying. But I'm going to say one thing. First, the first story I have, you'll see right here. Venezuelan soldiers abandon posts at Colombian border. This reports that they're defecting to Colombia. We got a bunch of updates. Aid trucks being burned. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to default in favor of mainstream media on this reporting for one reason. There's a lot of people in alternative media who are saying that the U.S. is lying, that these news agencies are lying and all that. And that may be true. Propaganda, look, you think that U.S. interests, even companies, would go against the interests of the government? Yes, sometimes. But here's the thing. There's a lot of people claiming things about Venezuela. They're claiming it's not as bad. They're claiming that there is food in shops. And a lot of these alternative personalities talking about Venezuela have made some claims that I can personally speak to. I have been to Venezuela. It was about 5 years ago at this point. There was very little food. There was very little in terms of resources. I went to a shopping mall and it was like almost empty. And it was damn near impossible to get cell phone technology. And they only had like 2G. Like, I kid you not, it was awful. So I've experienced this. Now, I can't say all of Venezuela. I went to a restaurant. They had food there. This was 5 years ago. Even though the economy was crazy with huge stacks of cash, I was able to eat chicken avocado arepas and things like that. But here's the thing. The mainstream media in the U.S., in London, like the BBC, NPR, they have no problem reporting on how the U.S. is killing civilians in foreign countries. Now, of course, sometimes they will, take the American perspective on things. But I'm going to say this. There are people in the alternative media who have said things I know are not true, and I don't know what else to base my judgment on other than if the BBC, if the New York Times are going to criticize Trump all day left and right, like I'm talking straight up like Yemen, Saudi Arabia, directly criticizing and reporting on bad, the things that are doing that are bad with foreign policy, then I'm going to lean in favor of them. So that's all we can really say. But keep in mind, it's propaganda across the board. And these stories, it could be all for the U.S. interests, right? But let's read what we got here first. Venezuelan soldiers are abandoning their post at the Colombia border. Soldiers from the Venezuelan National Guard have left their post ahead of an opposition-led effort to bring aid into the country. Yeah, because things get hot, right? So that's basically the first update. But now we have this. Maduro breaks diplomatic relations with Colombia. This is all happening a couple hours before you watch this video because I record a bunch of videos at once, so there's a time lag. As of 2:10 p.m., Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced he's breaking all diplomatic ties with neighboring Colombia amid deepening political turmoil. Maduro spoke Saturday as opposition leader Juan Guaido launched an effort to bring international humanitarian aid into Venezuela from across the border in Cúcuta, Colombia. Now, what the pro-Maduro people are saying is that these aid trucks are actually bringing in weapons. At least that's some of the speculation. And so what ends up happening? Well, first, let's hit this story. Guaido says more aid has crossed Venezuelan border, but is being blocked from going further. Apparently, there's a ton of news. Soldiers in the National Guard, I think the National Guard were shooting and killed several people. That's been reported. I've got a bunch of tweets we're going to go through. They're not in any particular order. That's why, I'm just trying to go through them. But you've got one side saying Maduro needs to be removed. He's a dictator and we need to get this aid. And other sides claiming the aid is a front for bringing in weapons. So this was AP's breaking report at 2 o'clock. So here's this is huge. We got a video here. This is from Breaking News Live, and it's a video that is alleging, again, this is all breaking news. It's hard to know what's true and what isn't. All 4 trucks carrying humanitarian aid from Colombia to Venezuela have been set on fire by pro-Maduro military forces. Civilians are desperately trying to save any remaining aid. And they're using Periscope. I guess the assumption is what we're looking at might be fake video. It might be from somewhere else. One of the things that happens in terms of propaganda is you'll see videos from, this happens a ton with Syria. They'll post videos from Afghanistan and claim it's Syria. They'll post things from even like from years ago and claim it's from today. So it's hard to actually break this down. But I will point out too, first of all, you can see them throwing boxes. I'm not going, like, I guess you could assume there might be weapons in these boxes, but it looks like they're throwing boxes of supplies of some sort. and they're bringing aid into the country. I was in Venezuela years ago, and I'm saying, man, like there were some areas that were okay. There were wealthy areas. I was able to get food, and there were some areas where it was wow, just like nothing. And I know some other people have shared the experience. So it's hard to know what's real in these situations. These boxes, I really doubt, are full of weapons or something. It looks like it. This is from USAID. Now, wow, look at that, USAID. When I was in Venezuela, some activist from the U.S. was tweeting to high-profile Venezuelans that I was working with the CIA through USAID. I don't know a lot about what that means, but they nearly got me killed and I had to flee the country. So you want to talk about the truth and what's really going on. You've got these far left personalities, anti-war personalities, which I can respect anti-war. Don't get me wrong. I'm rather anti-war, but they're siding with Venezuela in this matter. And when I tried asking them, then why was I threatened with death simply for being there filming? It's really interesting. And then it turns out a lot of these people who are pro-government work for government-funded sources. I do not trust press coming up from the Venezuelan side of these things. And look, I have no problem arguing with any of these, left-wing anti-war types. We can have the discussion. But I got to say, from my personal experience and from the threats I received, I was just there filming. I didn't assert what was or wasn't. We were there for about a day, and I started getting death threats, and I had to flee the country. In fact, there was one dude who was working for Vice who asked me how I got out, and when I told him as soon as the word broke and they were threatening me, we waited for the first flight out and left. And he said to me, if you waited any longer, they would have probably locked you up. They've locked up people for less. Like, you're being accused of being CIA, dude, on TV, right? So I have to wonder, why is it that when I go down there and I'm walking around filming and shaking hands and saying hi to people, all of a sudden I'm being labeled like I'm getting death threats. I don't trust it. I don't trust it at all. So we have this. Venezuelan security forces are shooting at protesters in Santa Elena de Urayan. Multiple injuries reported. I don't know what this source is, so keep in mind this. This information may or may not be. This is not confirmed. I've just pulled up these tweets, and we've got this one. Breaking News Live says pro-Maduro military forces have set fire to multiple trucks. So that's the video we saw. So here's the thing. AP is reporting this. The reason why I want to do this video is because we're seeing a ton of We're seeing a ton of news that shows an extreme escalation, right? There are reports that people have been shot and killed, maybe 4 people or more. Let me pull up. I don't remember which source I had exactly that had the shootings, but we're also seeing military defecting, and so this is why I led with this story. It is widely believed, and I think it's fair to believe, that as long as the military in Venezuela supports the government, there will be no change. But we heard that, I believe it was an Air Force general, had defected, and many people didn't even think he was in the country at this point, probably because he'd be killed if he defected in the country. But now we're hearing from the BBC that Venezuelan soldiers abandoned their post at the border. So we'll read through this. What's the latest? Local media report people jumping the barricades to cross the border at Venezuela and Colombia, while opposition MPs have posted defiant messages on social media denouncing the use of force. The BBC's Orla Gurin on the Colombia border said Venezuelans were begging soldiers to be allowed to cross. So it looks like standoff at Simon Bolivar Bridge, Venezuelans begging their countrymen for aid to be allowed through. Pictures show protesters burning outposts and throwing rocks at soldiers and riot police in border areas. Reporters at the scene have announced Mr. Guaido's arrival at the Tienditas Bridge on the Colombian side of the border. He was accompanied by the country's president, Ivan Duque. Mr. Guaido urged the military to allow aid trucks to enter, calling on them to put themselves on the side of the people. He confirmed that various members of the National Guard had left their posts at the Simon Bolivar International Bridge to oversee the humanitarian aid delivery. Those who do not allow aid to pass are deserters who betray the Venezuelan people, he added. 3 have abandoned posts at this bridge, while another did so at the Paula Santander International Bridge in Ureña, in the southwest of the country. We want work, people chanted as they faced riot police on the Ureña border bridge. Activists were joined by 300 members of the Women in White opposition group who marched in defiance with Mr. Maduro's attempts to close the border. There's another update, too, I want to make sure I get in real quick. It looks like Bernie Sanders is starting to get off the fence and side with U.S. interests on the matter, saying that Maduro is, he's doing things wrong. He's violating, people's rights and things like that. I don't have the exact quote pulled up, but I am seeing left-wing activists are upset now that Bernie Sanders is, quote, siding with Trump on the issue. They say, meanwhile, top ally of President Maduro has suggested the government would allow Venezuelans to accept aid at their own risk, but that no foreign soldiers would set foot in Venezuela. Earlier on Saturday, 2 people were killed by Venezuelan forces near the border with Brazil. Yeah, okay. So then it goes on and basically, I don't want to speculate too much, but it seems like there's been a dramatic escalation in the past day or so, and it's getting worse as time goes on. It's likely by the time this video is out, things have gotten substantially worse. This is really important. We are seeing a massive international shift. The U.S. and many Western nations are siding with Guaido, the interim president, while many people on the left, including countries like Russia, are saying, no way, Maduro is in charge. But this is going to be huge. Venezuela is one of the most oil-rich nations, if not the most. So there's massive resources to be gained, and naturally people are criticizing the U.S. There's a meme that, about how the U.S. invades wherever they find oil. And there was one recently where it was a news story that said the U.S. becomes the largest exporter of fossil fuels. And then the next image was a bunch of soldiers, running around a burning White House, and it said, America invades America because we have oil. But anyway, I don't know. I guess the main point of this video is a bunch of updates. It's kind of losing all over the place. It's hard to know what's happening, but things are heating up. It's going to get big. So we'll stay tuned. If there's any, definitive updates, I'll definitely have some stories as soon as they come. And stick around. I got another video coming up in a few minutes.